Mejor ir hoy, ¿no? Mucha gente misera.
Absolute Superman has been amazing up to this point, but this may very well be the best single issue of the entire run so far. And you guys will see what I'm talking about as we get through this. But what this does is this picks up in the aftermath of the defeat of Ra's al Ghul and Lazarus Corp and the entire war or battle of Smallville, depending on how you want to look at it. So in effect, it's almost kind of like a resting period, but for the most part, Superman doesn't get any rest here, right? Because what it does is it opens up and it says it takes a few weeks, but Smallville starts to feel like Smallville again. No more news crews and no more Lazarus Corp. Just the wind and the stars and the smell of fresh cut hay. Folks say it's as quiet now as it ever was. I smile and nod when they say that and try not to flinch at the noise. And so that's when he hears a sound. He's working on this tractor and he says, day and night, there's always the noise. More all the time from farther away. I try to focus on one sound to tune out the rest. Cicadas, heartbeats of the heifers a few pastures over, church choir in Topeka. It never works for long. There's always someone somewhere who starts screaming. So I do what my folks would have done. For this, they call me Superman, a name I've never much cared for, but it doesn't matter what anyone calls me. I know who I am. And so, right off the bat, some of you guys who are long standing comic book readers are going to start to notice some strong similarities between the story of Miles Morales and Marvel Comics and what you're seeing here. Because this is Superman becoming Superman, learning the nature of his powers. And you'll see what I mean with the Miles Morales comparison here in a minute. But what ends up happening is that there is a dam that's effectively cracking, right? And as a result of that, Superman is responding. Now, lest we forget, while the Sol AI doesn't really exist anymore, it basically sacrificed itself in order to seemingly defeat Brainiac, even if only momentarily. Despite all of that, Superman's cape is still technology based, meaning it allows him to do things that he wouldn't normally be able to do. Instead of just a really strong, really fast guy, you can almost imagine the cape as something akin to like Spider-Man's webbing to a degree, in the sense that he starts hearing all these voices while he's holding this dam together with his cape quite literally spread all over the place to seal the cracks. But here's what's interesting here. He hears things like historical levels of rainfall have led to catastrophic flooding, 7 million hectares of forest lost to wildfires. And then he starts hearing the voices of other people, right? No right to live. I hope somebody puts a bullet in your smug little brain. Poisoning our country. We need to round them all up, right? Crumbling infrastructure, blamed for structural collapse, making landfall with the strongest wind speeds ever recorded. He's hearing all these different comments from all these different people, and it's a wide array of different circumstances, right? Political pundits, people who are just sitting at home. So it's everything from people who want to do something about the world but feel too powerless to do it, all the way to people who are raising awareness for things, right? Someone needs to fix this, but it needs to be someone else because I don't really care enough to do it. That kind of thing, right? It's everyone from everywhere. And that's where things get interesting because then there's this comment, right? Mr. Scott, sir, I'm afraid another fire has broken out at one of the factories. Shall I send the usual thoughts and prayers? And that's where Superman responds right now. Here's the thing Winslow Scott is basically Toyman in DC Comics. Now, Toyman's old school. For those of you guys who don't know about him, go all the way back to Action Comics number 64, right back in the 1940s. Toyman was initially introduced as this kind of goofy character, right? That he seemed more comedic and almost harmless more than anything else. He would literally develop these toys and then fight Superman. So again, Superman comics back in the 40s, that was to be expected. Over the decades in DC Comics, going into the 60s and 70s, all the way to his post-crisis reboot under John Byrne in The Man of Steel, Toyman has evolved and changed over the years. And while for the most part in the main DC universe, his machinations were always a love of kids and a love of toys and believing that adults are ruining the world, so kind of having like this childlike mindset, his toys have become more and more deranged and dangerous as time has gone on. So he's almost kind of a misnomer. If you're dealing with Toyman and you don't really know what you're dealing with, he seems harmless and silly until this giant robot that he's made that looks like it's something from Toy Story starts firing laser beams and shooting missiles. Then it gets really bonkers really fast. He's one of the most interesting and honestly fun characters in DC. But in the absolute universe, it's anything but. Instead, he's just this corrupt business tycoon. Because when Superman arrives here, he talks to him directly. He says, there was a fire at one of your toy factories, the fourth fire in less than 2 years. Last time, 73 workers died, some as young as 12, and you walked away with a fine and a slap on the wrist. Consider this your last slap on the wrist. You became a billionaire off the backs of children, working 16-hour shifts, breathing lead and benzene, making toys that sell for more than they are paid in a week. You are going to correct that imbalance, Toyman, or I will do it for you. And where Toyman kind of starts to freak out, right? Like, who in the world are you? Superman just says, ask Lazarus Corp what I am. People like you, atop your mountains of wealth, you live your lives so high in the clouds, so far above everyone else that you've always been untouchable. I want you to tell your friends those days are over. And he says, none of you are untouchable. Not to me. Change your way of life, Winslow Scott. I will be watching. Now, here's what's so amazing about this, and this is why I talk about the kind of themes that tie into the idea of Miles Morales, but how it's also leading him ever closer to Superman in the main DC universe. When Miles Morales first became Spider-Man within Marvel Comics, it was the idea of him learning his abilities and learning how his powers worked, but also balancing his wants and his needs, which is to say, for someone like Superman here, right, the idea is he could end all these corporate corrupted tycoons like that. He could just throw them into the sun. He could drag them through the atmosphere where they would basically burn alive. Whatever the case happens to be, he could just rid the world of all these guys. And while emotionally he may want to, practically he cannot. Why? Because he cannot make the determination of who gets to live and who gets to die based on his one individual thought, right? It's how societies work. One person cannot have the ability to decide everything that happens, whether it is an average Joe or it is a political figure. And the reason why is because if a person were able to do that, they would be a king. Or they would be a queen, or they would be an emperor or an empress. And the only differentiation between an average Joe and some super high up political figure would be the ability for that average Joe to overthrow that political figure. One person cannot control it all. But more so than that, as he is becoming Superman, he's kind of treading this incredibly fine line. How do you play this role where you show people how to become better than they are while not becoming the person that everyone looks to solve their problems? And the question is why? Because people choose the path that grants the greatest reward for the least amount of work possible. Why work harder than you have to? Whether it's right or wrong is irrelevant. But if people can simply just hope Superman solves their problems and expect him to, they will do that. And then they will get angry when he doesn't. So it's kind of a really fine line that he's walking here, and it's tough because at that point, he jumps to the Nevada desert, right? And he just says, he's not here, right? Walking through this facility, he says, it doesn't look like he's been here for weeks, but this was definitely his lab. I can smell him in every part of it. It smells like death and rotting madness. It smells like Brainiac. And as he walks through here, he says, you were right. He kept miniaturized alien cities, populated cities, and subjected them to all manner of deranged experiments. There were millions of beings in these bottles screaming for help. I should have heard them, and I know what you're thinking, but I already checked every last one. All these cities stolen from different alien planets. I couldn't help but hope. But no, there is nothing here from Krypton. Nothing at all. And he just says, I miss you, Saul. And the response, command not recognized. No such program detected. And so Superman still talks to his suit. But more so than that, one of the things that we're learning here is that there is no bottled city of Kandor. That part of Superman's mythos is long since gone. For those of you guys who don't know, the bottled city of Kandor was an awesome concept and a tragic concept in the Superman mythos once you start looking at it. The idea was that Superman considered himself the last son of Krypton. He was the sole survivor. There was nothing left. He was all there was. But then he discovered Brainiac had taken the city of Kandor and shrunk it down, which meant that while for the longest time Superman never had the ability to return the city to its proper size. Eventually he did. While he never quite had that ability, at the very least, he wasn't alone anymore. But this kind of solidifies that he's more alone now than he's ever been. Because not only are there no other Kryptonians left besides him, there is no Sol suit. There's no Sol AI. But he keeps talking to it. That's why he says, everything is so broken here, Sol. I don't know that I can do this without you. I don't know if I can do it at all. Now, this is an important thing, and I want you to keep that statement in the back of your head because we're going to cycle back around to it. But what ends up happening is following this, he goes to visit Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul is currently being held prisoner, and Ra's kind of taunts him a little bit, right? Come to gloat, have you, boy? Perhaps you're more cruel than I gave you credit for. And he says, go ahead. Relish your triumph. You earned the right. Behold the mighty Ra's al Ghul as he withers away. But Superman is not here to gloat. And in fact, he basically says that. Your jailers assure me you're being afforded proper medical care. Is this untrue? And Ross just says, I am beyond their care, boy. I have been denied the Lazarus Pit treatments that have sustained me for centuries. Denied by my own company. It would seem my removal from office was not enough. The ungrateful shareholders wish to distance themselves from me permanently. And he says they'd better pray I die in this cell, as should you, Superman. And the response of Superman, I didn't come to gloat or indulge your threats. I am here because you're right about one thing, Mr. Al Ghul. This is not finished between us. And where Roz initially takes this as a kind of statement of, oh yes, I'll inevitably escape this prison, the two of us will fight, and I will prove my strength over you. Superman actually says, that's exactly what I've been afraid of, right? On Krypton, the Law Guild gave life or death sentences for almost every crime. Criminals were executed or written off and never seen again. But I am looking for a reason to hope here, and I am starting with you. And he says, a few hundred years ago, you realized this world was headed towards collapse. You thought that you might be the one to save it. But I think that you forgot along the way what it was that you set out to save. And I am hoping this can help you remember. And Roz asked the question, right? What is that in your hand? And Superman says, prayers, mantras, poems, written by children from the slums outside this jail, written for you after their parents died in your copper mines or were beaten to death by your peacemakers. And that's where Roz laughs at him, right? Like, you seek to rehabilitate Ra's al Ghul with the musings of orphans. And he says, you are too pathetic for words, boy. And he says, yes, give it here, Superman. This jail has a shortage of toilet tissue. I will put this book to good use. And that's where Superman just says, no, Roz, not like that. You will not. And so he ultimately just kind of races off. And at that point, he deals with this fire, right? The fire in the Amazon. And the question's asked, right? The fire in the Amazon, was that you? And where he's initially asking this person what they're talking about, right? This person says, they say it stretched for 20 miles and then somehow just suddenly disappeared. Did you do that? And then they ask, how did you do that? And he just says, I didn't know how to put it out, so I just swallowed it. And that's when they ask, right? Like, you swallowed a wildfire. And he says, as much as I could, yeah. And then I moved it to somewhere that it could do some good. The Flint Hills in Kansas were due for a controlled burn. And that's when you find out he's talking to Lois in Metropolis. And she's just like, so let me see if I understand this. You ate 12,000 acres of tropical wildfire and then puked it into Kansas. Is that what you are telling me right now? It's an amazing response, right? I love the way this is done. And that's where he's just like, I mean, I suppose you could say that, right? I don't really know what else to do. Should I have done something different? And she's like, I mean, you're asking me? It's 12,000 acres of wildfire. Like, I don't even know where to begin with something like that. But the idea of swallowing it and spitting it out somewhere else, right? Turning into Kirby never quite occurred to me. And that's where he just says, Lois, I have no idea what I am doing out here. And that's where she asks, is this on the record? And he just asks the question, right? What do you mean? And she's like, can I write about this? And he just says, I would rather that you didn't. Right? And she initially almost seems to approach him from the perspective of like, I really should. But he says, I'm happy that people heard your reports from the siege of Smallville. And I'm glad that you and Jimmy are getting job offers. It's important work that you do here. But you know how I feel about all of this. And And she says about being someone who can inspire billions. And he just says, I'm just trying to help, right? I'm not interested in that. And so she asks him, like, would you like a beer? But then suddenly he hears this kind of call out in the middle of nowhere. And she's like, I know you have super hearing. I know you heard me. And while he does acknowledge that he heard her, he's distracted, right? And she's like, you can swallow wildfire. It's like iced tea, coffee, kombucha, like something, anything. And he just asked, right, which way is Peoria? She's like, well, I mean, I think it's that way, but I don't know, like 160 miles. And he just takes off, right? He just races off here and goes to deal with a crisis out in Peoria. And while we don't necessarily see what the crisis is, what makes this exchange so amazing is Superman's concern about the world knowing that he's trying to figure things out as he's going along. There is legitimacy to that statement from, what was it, Iron Man 2, I think? If you can make God bleed, people will stop believing in him, right? There's merit to that, and it is an accurate statement. At the moment, whether people love him or hate him, they look at Superman as this almost mythological figure, right? A god among men. But if it turns out he's just a dude on this world who's just trying to figure things out, then suddenly people start looking at him with a more skewed perspective. Well, could you have done that differently? Why should we trust you? Right? You have no clue what you're doing. You've been shining us on this whole time, right? All that kind of stuff. People will start to convince themselves that he's not nearly the person that they initially tricked themselves into believing, right? So they'll create a hypothetical scenario, then they'll convince themselves the hypothetical scenario is not real, then they'll get mad about the fact that the original hypothetical scenario they tricked themselves into believing turned out to be false based on what they've been telling themselves. Right? Like, people are often their own problem. And so that's why when you switch over to the farm, there's this really interesting conversation that he has with Lana Lang, right? Where she's like, you really fixed the place up, like it looks great. And she says, I heard the bank finalized the papers. After the avalanche of all the negative press, Lazarus was sure quick to divest itself of all Smallville holdings. The Kent place is yours now. How does it feel? And he's just kind of distracted the whole time, right? He says, sorry, there's just so much noise. And she asks, right, are you sleeping, Clark? And he says, sometimes I lie in the clouds to recharge, but someone always starts screaming. And so she just tells him, right, like, what you're doing here is incredible, Clark. You're literally trying to save the world. And in some ways, you're trying to save the world from itself. But the reality here is more than any of that. While your parents would applaud what you're doing, they would also say you need to take care of yourself. All of Smallville wants the same, including Mrs. Crabtree on Arapahoe Road. And he just tells her, right, put the casseroles next to all the others, right? I'm going to fly them to some kids in Sudan. And so she says, I know you've got a lot of work to do. And he says, yeah, I want to get the field ready for planting the way that the Kents would have done it, right? Not using any powers. And she just says, if you happen to have a free moment, maybe you could stop by the diner for something to eat. And he just races off. This is the other part of it. Clark Kent is trying to save the world while also refusing to be a part of it. And that's kind of the huge differentiation between himself and Superman in the main DC universe. And that's what I mean when I talk about this idea of him running headlong into that encounter between the two. Because what ends up happening is that as he takes off, we get this amazing monologue.
Dude, I play like that. I always play like what? Why is it relaxing? Why is that called relaxing? Like not dying or something? Necesito hacer cositas y me estoy haciendo bien pendejo. A ver, bueno, ya conté los calcetines, ya conté algo de ropa.
Right? Where he says, at first, Roz laughs and mocks me as I read. After only a few weeks of daily readings, the laughter ends. And he says Roz never touches the book. Reports of a hurricane off the coast of Portugal. I tell myself I have enough time for a few more rows. I know that I cannot be everywhere, but I try. Miles away, a car goes off an embankment. Passengers have only a second to react. It feels obscene to listen, but it feels more obscene not to, right? He says there's a child in Thailand, body riddled with cancer, no family. She does not want to die alone, staring at the ceiling. So I make sure that she doesn't. After the child dies in my arms, I spend the next hour alone in the stratosphere, screaming so loud it knocks satellites from orbit, screaming to try and drown out the screams. How long can I possibly endure this? Long enough to see a world slip through my fingers all over again? I am killing myself just to give them more time. More time to suffer and tremble. More time. Is that a gift or a curse? It depends on the day that you ask me. All I know for certain is that this is home now. Kal-El of Krypton, Clark Kent of Kansas, Superman of Earth. They are all me. And sometimes, for a moment, lost in the blue, we all get to close our eyes and remind ourselves that the noise means life. Survival is never silent. The cacophony means that we are alive, and it means we have hope. It's the silence we should fear. Now, here's why all of this is so important. And this is why I say it kind of includes the Miles Morales concept, but also sends him headlong into Superman. There's a lot of themes here about him becoming a superhero, him understanding what it means to save the world, but he hasn't found balance yet. And that's where the Miles Morales concept comes into play. When Miles Morales, again, was becoming Spider-Man, figuring itself out, beset on all sides by people who were telling him, you cannot be Spider-Man. Peter Parker died. It's disrespectful to take up the mantle. Kind of a reflection of people who hated Miles Morales when he was initially introduced. Brian Michael Bendis wrote a story called Spider-Man. It was Brian Michael Bendis' way of telling all the Miles Morales haters, complain all you want to, he's not going anywhere, and eventually you will learn to love him. And they did, right? So those haters' opinions didn't really amount to much back then. But what's also important is that during Spider-Man, Peter Parker from the main Marvel Universe met Miles Morales and gave Miles his blessing and said, you're doing the best you can, and that's all you ever can do. Now, take that concept and roll it into what will be the inevitable encounter between Absolute Superman and Superman from the main DC universe. Fingers crossed it happens outside of DCKO. You can imagine Superman in the main DC universe talking to Absolute Superman, them having a conversation, and him teaching him the most important lesson of all. Yes, you understand that you cannot be everywhere at once, but you also have to learn to be okay with that. You have to learn to accept the fact that there are some people in the world who are going to die because you weren't there. You cannot let it weigh on your conscience. If anything, it should motivate you to become a better Superman, but you cannot take the entire world on your shoulders. You have to make time for yourself, but you also have to be a part of the world. You have to spend time with the people in the world. Those who live up in ivory towers, those who are disconnected from the world as a whole, the ultra wealthy, the ultra powerful, that's what cost them their humanity. They've been so far away from being involved of the average person's life, they've forgotten what it means. And so that's what the lesson is here. And that's what he is learning himself. And so as he goes on, kind of talking to himself with this poem that he was reading to Ra's al Ghul, that has actually started to blunt the sharper edges of Ra's al Ghul and seemingly turn him into a more human person as he kind of fades away. That one of the most poignant parts of this poem is, in the name of the sun's divine light. That applies more to Superman because he derives his power from solar energy. So as he's out here in the sky, screaming about the fact that he cannot help everybody, the frustration that comes with it all, he just says, like, in the name of the sun, right? In the name of the sun's divine light, he's suddenly met by Absolute Hawkman, who just shows up here on the scene. I just asked him, like, what the hell are you doing? Now, here's what we don't know. right? Hawkman, as he exists now, beat Green Arrow to death, which was pretty wild. I hope we do end up getting a story about Green Arrow. That's a prequel to how he died, because absolute Green Arrow just sounds amazing. Right? And hopefully we get an absolute Connor Hawk. That would be pretty dope too. But for the most part, in the one-shot comic that we got, he was really depicted as more of like a bounty hunter than anything else, right? Or the arm of the Absolute Justice League. So we don't know if he's here as a friend or a foe. We
God
just know he's here.
damn.
And I'm excited to find out what happens next, because apparently in the next issue, they're going to fight, which is going to be pretty awesome. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.
God damn. That sounds crazy. Verga, ya tengo 3. Estoy bien roto. Sabe de lo que habla. Entonces es eso que oh no. Puta madre. Me estoy haciendo popó. Estoy haciendo del mano. ¿Cómo? Ah. Me estoy haciendo del... Al cero serían 4. Oh no, no saben jugar con mis pinches manos. La pinche IA está toda estúpida. ¿Qué dice que hace esa carta? Alter Grid me lo busca. Lanzador de conjuros. están a gustar. Son una mamada, viejo. Muy. Entonces nada más me queda media hora o algo así. Ese no hizo puntos. ¿Qué tal este? Me voy a ir con uno de media sin parar. Termino eso, me cambio. Termino de llegar, me voy. Interesante. Green Arrow. Tengo que ver ese pedo. ¿Cómo que Hawkman mató a Green Arrow, güey? No he visto ese cómic, güey. Vale verga, güey. Y ese universo Absolute sí está bien culerote, güey. Siempre matan a Green Arrow, ¿no? En Injustice también lo mataron, creo. Qué triste, viejo. No más, ahí es cuando dices por eso el multiverso. Ah, cabrón, si no es que media hora. Por eso el multiverso es como lo único que dices, bueno. Pues ni pedo, ¿no? Dicen que esto es a ver. No, es que sí son fastidiosos. Ah, ok.
Quit embarrassing yourself. Consider it
Listo,
shot.
ya por fin te pesqué.
Ready to get cool?
¿Qué? ¿42? Interesante.
You
Lo
look
voy a
pretty
hacer.
amped up. I'm just warming up.
15. Entonces debe de tener 1%, ¿no? De defensa.
Should I kill you or
30.
ready to get school?
Más 41% de 30. Eso sube hasta no sé cuánto.
I'm a lethal weapon. Consider it shock therapy. Ready to get school? I won't break anything important.
12%.
You look pretty amped up. Ready to get smacked down? Now for the big guns. Consider it shock therapy. That's how it's done in Motown.
Supergirl.
Dijo que la quería usar con esto.
Supergirl. The Flash. Wonder Woman.
At least you'll die laughing.
You don't look like a hero. You insured for beatdowns? I can break every bone in your body. around with me. You fight like a noob.
I'll turn that crowd upside down.
You don't look like a hero. Earth has a new protector. You fight like a noob. Only way out of here is through me.
Así que nomás son el 2 y el 3 los que interrumpen, ¿verdad?
Born to run. You keep falling behind. Evidence suggests you'll lose. Bet you didn't see that coming.
Earth has a new protector.
Losing momentum?
You don't look like a hero. Earth has a new protector.
My punchlines keep landing.
You fight like a noob.
This farce is played out. Bad idea to tick me off. Fighting me was a mistake.
Shouldn't handle thorns.
Shriek into terror. Dread consumes you. Tickles. I am your fears personified. Get off my arm. Club soda will get that right out.
You're a thorn in my side.
I'm the man of steel.
If I prick, do you bleed?
Justice requires order. You'll never get past me. Dread consumes you. Tickles. This is for your own good. Shriek into terror.
Ya no le hizo el segundo daño.
You just don't know it.
Bad idea to tick me off. This world is mine.
Ah, la evasión, claro.
Dread consumes you. I'll show you funny. Be very afraid.
You're a thorn in my side.
Are you distressed? I am your fears personified.
Snap a bomb, snap your neck.
600. 2600. Ah, todavía falta una torre. Es que se las dejé vivir a ambos, ¿no? Una torre. El 20. Si es para que alguien nos atacara, ¿no? Pero bueno. Esto tenía un cachote de vida.
How's that for a Star City welcome?
Dice que no,
Don't
güey.
let the funny costume fool you.
Por favor. Interesante.
The quiver's not empty yet. For the Guardians! Beware my power! How's that for a Star City welcome? I will melt you. Feels good to be green. Green Lantern's back. Ever see Vision up close? I'm a nuclear-powered badass.
Is something distracting you?
Temperature's rising. Earth now, my
Pero.
How's that for a Star City welcome? This will haunt your dreams. Don't let the funny costume fool you. Ow, my.
Ready for your close-up? You fight without instinct. Ready for your close-up?
Green with envy.
Speed of a cheetah.
Envy. Y todavía no hay partidas defensivas.